கருத்த நஞ்சமுண்டிருண்ட கண்டர் காலனின்னுயிர் மறுத்த மானிதன்ற நாகம் வன்மை செய்த மைந்தனூர் வெறித்து பேதியோடு மூசி வெள்ளை வெள்ளை நீள் கொடி அறுத்த மண்டியாவி பாயும் அந்த நாரூர் என்பதே. வரைத்தலம் எடுத்தவன் முடித்தலம் முரத்தொடும் நெறித்தவன் புறத்தை முன் எரித்தவன் இருந்த ஊர் நிறைத்த மாளிகை திருவினேரனார்கள் வெண்ணகை அறத்த வாய் மடந்தை மார்களாடுமாரூர் என்பதே. These are two hymns from the Thirukkadaikappu written by Thiruñanasambandar. ஞானசம்பந்தர் was one of the 63 mystic Shaivite saints of Tamil Nadu, together called the Nayanmargal. Among the 63 Nayanmar saints, 3 of them, namely Thiruñanasambandar, Sundaramurthy Nayanar and Tirunavukkarasar, are accorded a special status as the Thevaara Moovar or Thevaaram trio. In today's episode, we'll be glancing into the hymns composed by these 3 great saints in Thiruvaroor. To begin with, in the hymns that I just sang now, Thiruñanasambandar mentions some valiant acts of Shiva. He says, Karutha nanjam undu irunda kandar. He who has a dark neck caused by consuming the black venom. Purattai mun yarittavan. He who burnt Tripura once upon a time. And he also mentions how Shiva crushed Ravana's ego and how he rescued Markandeya from the clutches of death. Saying all this, he also gives a beautiful description of the city of Thiruvaroor and its inhabitants. He says, திருவினேர்கள் வெண்ணகை அரத்த வாய் மடந்தை மார்கள் ஆடும் ஆரூர். A brief description of the Rudrakanikas or Devadasis associated with the Thiruvaroor temple during his time. He says, ladies who are as beautiful as Mahalakshmi with a dazzling white smile and bright red lips dance in Thiruvaroor. In contrast to the later scenario where these Devadasis were painted in a negative light, ஞானசம்பந்தர் compares them to Devi Mahalakshmi and says that they were very esteemed and revered members of the Thiruvaroor temple fraternity. We'll look further into their relationship with Lord Tyagesha in the coming episodes. But these Devadasis have existed for centuries and occupy a notable position in the development of Shaivism in Tamil Nadu. Going as far back as the 7th or 8th century to the days of Sundaramurthy Nayanar, Rudraganika plays a very important role in his story. Sundaramurthy Nayanar is the second of the 3 saints that we're going to look into today. Sundaramurthy Nayanar has a very close association with Tyagasha Perumal because the original name of Sundarar when he was born, that he was christened by his parents, was Nambi Arurar. And Tyagasha Perumal in Thiruvaroor is also known as Arurar for being the Lord of Arur. So both of them have this one very striking link as Arurar in their names itself. And just as Lord Shiva's devotees can be anything from a wild hunter to a royal emperor, the Lord's relationship with each of them is also very different. He has come as a tradesman, as a physician, a son, a mother, and so on for different bhaktas. In the case of Sundaramurthy Nayanar, he comes as a friend, which is why Sundarar is known as Thambiran Tholar, the comrade or friend of the Lord. When Sundarar arrives in Thiruvaroor, he sings about Tyagasha Perumal. And when he's there, he also happens to see a Rudraganika or a Devadasi there named Paravanachiyar. And he requests Tyagasha Perumal to get him married to Paravanachiyar. And being the friend of Sundarar, he's obliged to do this work. So he arranges for their wedding and gets them married. They live happily, and Sundarar continues his pilgrimages to different Shiva Kshetrams. He finally happens to reach Thiruvotriyur, which is another of the kshetrams dedicated to Lord Shiva. There he finds a lady named Sangili Nachiyar and asks the Lord there to get him married to her. The interesting thing is, in Thiruvaroor, Shiva is known as Tyagesha or Tyagaraja, and even in Thiruvotriyur, one of his names is Tyagaraja. So he asks this Lord to get, Sundarar asks him to get him married to Sangili Nachiyar. And what's important to note here is that apart from being Sundarar's friend, there is another reason why Lord Shiva helps Sundarar through these mischiefs and second marriages and everything. Because before this birth of Sundarar, he was initially one of Lord Shiva's attendants in Kailasha. One day, he happens to see 2 of Devi Parvati's attendants and gets attracted to them. And Lord Shiva then tells Sundarar to take birth in Bhuloka to fulfill and eliminate this pang of desire before returning to Kailasha. So Lord Shiva arranges for Sundarar's second marriage solely in order to get rid of their accumulated desires and finally help these three individuals to return to Kailasha after fulfilling their destiny on earth. So to do so, Shiva appears in Sangli Nachiyar's dream and conveys Sundarar's desire to get married to her. Sangli Nachiyar is a little skeptical at first because she already knows that Sundarar has a wife in Thiruvaroor, and she's afraid that he may abandon her at some point and go back to his first wife in Thiruvaroor. So to secure her marriage, she tells Shiva that she will marry Sundarar if he can promise that day onwards he will not leave the bounds of Thiruvotriyur. Lord Shiva does play a small leela here, but we'll skip slightly ahead in the interest of time. Inevitably at the end, Sundarar pledges to Sangli Nachiyar as asked and gets married to her. They live happily for a while, but soon the yearning to go see his Tyagesha in Thiruvaroor catches up to Sundarar. He suffers in separation and longs to see the Arur Tyagesha again. This emotion is very well reflected in this padal that I'll sing for you now. ஏழிசைய இசை பயனாய் இன்னமுதாய் என்னுடைய தோழனுமாய் ஏழிசைய இசை பயனாய் இன்னமுதாய் என்னுடைய தோழனுமாய் யான் செய்யும் திருசுகளுக்குடனாகி மாழையோன் கண் பறவையை தந்தாண்டானை மதியில்லா ஏழை ஏன் பிரிந்திருக்கேன் மதியில்லா ஏழை ஏன் பிரிந்திருக்கேன் என்னாரூர் இறைவனையே என்னாரூர் இறைவனையே. Here Sundarar laments saying, why am I being a poor fool and distancing myself from my friend Arur Tyagesha, who has given me my lovely wife Paravai Nachiyar in Thiruvaroor. Saying this, it seems like he got the impression that after all Tyagesha is his friend, so taking some friendly liberty is warranted. So with this in mind, and unable to bear the pangs of separation from Arur Tyagesha, Sundarar violates the promise he made and leaves for Thiruvaroor. But the moment he crosses the bounds of Thiruvotriyur, he loses vision in both eyes as a penalty for his mistake. Sundarar is aghast and he's at a loss. He cries and struggles to find his way to Kanchipuram. There, taking pity on him, the Lord restores vision in one eye. Now, it's interesting that Sundarar is also called Van Tondar, or the argumentative, aggressive devotee, which means that as a friend, he fully exercises the right to scold and rebuke his friend Tyagesha or Shiva. And this shade of Sundarar comes out very prominently at this juncture as he almost angrily threatens Tyagesha Peruman. விற்றுக் கொள்வீர் ஒற்றி அல்லேன் விரும்பியாட்பட்டேன் குற்றம் ஒன்றும் செய்ததில்லை கொத்தையாக்கினீர் எற்று கடிகேள் என் கண் கொண்டீர் நீரே பழிபட்டீர் மற்றை கண் தான் தாராதொழிந்தால் வாழ்ந்து போதீரே. Sundara says, குற்றம் ஒன்றும் செய்ததில்லை. I've done no crime, I've made no mistake, but என் கண் கொண்டீர் நீரே பழிபட்டீர். Yet you took away my eyesight, so you're the one to blame, you're at fault. And in the same Padigam, he goes one step further to say a few more lines. He says, என்றும் முட்டா பாடும் அடியார் தங்கண் காணாது குன்றில் முட்டி குழியில் வீழ்ந்தால் வாழ்ந்து போதீரே. He threatens Tyagesha here. He says, என்றும் முட்டா பாடும் அடியார். Me being a Shivanadiyar or a devotee of Lord Shiva, I've been singing your praises without faltering, consistently. And now, because you took away my eyesight, if I happen to falter, if I clash against a hill, or if I fall in a hole and injure myself, or if anything happens to me, the entire blame will be on you. So saying this, he pleads to Tyagesha Peruman to get his eyesight back. And when he approaches Thiruvaroor, he makes one final attempt to plead his case. He says, Natramil valla ஞான சம்பந்தனும் நாவினுக் கரையனும் நாளைப் போவானும் கற்ற நல்சூதனும் நற்சாக்கியனும் சிலந்தி கண்ணப்பன் கனப்புலன் அனைவரும் செய்த குற்றங்களை குணமென கருதும் நின் கொள்கை கண்டு குற்றம் செய்து நின் குறைக்கழல் அடைந்தேன். He says. So he lists a long list of devotees and says all of these people made mistakes. Navinik Karayan, the upper Peruman, who we're going to see next, was converted to Shamanam and troubled Shaivites or Shivanadiyargal. Narchakiyan was another Nayanmar who threw stones at the Shivalinga. The Silandi or the spider built a canopy out of its spit, and Kannappa Nayanar, in the name of doing Abishekam, took water in his mouth and spat it on the Shivalingam and put his foot on the Shivalingam at one point of time. So what seem like mistakes or faults to us, you seem to consider them the virtues of your bhaktas. Seeing your principle to consider people's faults as their virtues, Kutram Seid nin Kuraikadal Adaindhen. I too made a mistake to avail those merciful feet of yours. After so much pleading and so much threatening, finally his eyesight is restored to Sundaramurti Nayanar. So his approach to Shiva is very emotional, very friendly, and sometimes very unusual. And even the way that Shiva has interacted with him, coming and arranging for his marriages and truly interacting with him like a friend, is something very unusual. And now coming to the third and the final member of the Thevaara Moovar that we're looking into today, we have Appar Peruman, whose approach is very different from this, who often sees Tyagesha as philosophical and as an esoteric deity. He sung over 20 padigams, which means over 200 hymns in Thiruvaroor. And in this particular hymn that we're about to see, he describes Tyagesha like the Paramporul or the Supreme Spirit, which is described in the Purusha Suktam. The specialty of the Purusha Suktam is that it appears in all 4 of the Vedas, and here the Purusha or the Supreme Spirit is described as the one with 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes and 1,000 feet. Even in a simpler, more accessible text for us, in the Vishnu Sahasranamam that many of us are familiar with, Lord Brahma, who is the Lord of the Vedas, condenses the message from there and says, Namostvanantaya Sahasramurtaye Sahasrapadakshi Shirorubahave Sahasranamne Purushaya Shashvate Sahasrakoti Yugadharine Namaha. The Lord, who is in 1,000 forms with 1,000 eyes, feet, heads, thighs and arms, is worshipped by 1,000 names, is what Brahma says. And we think that this is what the description he gives to Mahavishnu is. But to show that Mahavishnu and Shiva are no different, that they are the Purusha, the primordial Purusha, Appar Peruman has the same vision of Shiva when he comes to Thiruvaroor. He says, ஆயிரம் தாமரை போலும் ஆயிரம் தாமரை போலும் ஆயிரம் சேவடியானும் ஆயிரம் பொன்வரை போலும் ஆயிரம் தோளுடையானும் ஆயிரம் ஞாயிறு போலும் ஆயிரம் நீன் முடியானும் ஆயிரம் பேருகந்தானும் ஆரூரமர்ந்த அம்மானே. In this padal, Appar has a very similar image of Shiva. He says, Ayiram Sevadi. And in the Vishnu Sahasranama it was as Sahasrapada, which means the same thing. Ayiram Toludayanum Sahasra Bahave. Ayiram Neenmudiyanum Sahasra Shirisha Purusha. So you see the exact parallels. And even further, at the end, Brahma had said, Sahasra Namne Purushaya Shashvate. He who is sung by 1,000 names. We know that Vishnu has the Vishnu Sahasranamam containing 1,000 names of his. How does Tyagesha Peruman have 1,000 names when Appar says Ayiram Perukandanum? It's interesting to note that the one who we usually associate with the Vishnu Sahasranamam, Mahavishnu himself, is the one who gave Tyagesha Peruman his first set of 1,000 names. When we looked into the Sthala Puranam last week, we saw that Tyagesha Peruman was installed on Mahavishnu's chest in Vaikuntham. There, Mahavishnu worships Tyagesha by giving him 1,000 names, and which are collectively called the Mukunda Sahasranamam. And when Muchukunda Chakravarti brought him back to earth, he sings another 1,000 names called the Muchukunda Sahasranamam. So these substantiate why he is Ayiram Peru Handanum, and not just one, but he has 2 Sahasranamams to his credit, apart from numerous other stotras. So, drawing a close to the experience of the Thevaara Moovar that we saw today, over the last 2 episodes, we've been exploring or seeing Tyagesha Peruman in a more story-like fashion, and we are slowly progressing towards viewing him as a more abstract deity. Even today, we began with the Veera Sahasa stories of Shiva narrated by Sambandar, and proceeded into seeing him in a little more esoteric fashion in the form of the primordial Purusha as described in the Purusha Sukta and so on by Appar. I want to take this one step further in the coming week, and I want to look at Tyagesha in his philosophical Advaitic form. Mahan Shri Muthuswami Dikshitar has written a whole kriti as part of the Tyagaraja Vibhakti series, extolling Tyagesha as the embodiment of Advaita. Even further, Dikshitar has this habit of placing the most integral, crucial message at the very center of a work. In that manner, among the 8 kritis in the Tyagaraja Vibhakti set, he positions this Darbar Raga kriti I'm talking about as the 5th in the set, making it almost exactly the centerpiece. The raga chosen for this kriti alludes to us that, similar to how the royal court or Darbar symbolizes what a Raja stands for, Dikshitar constructs the Darbar for this Tyaga Raja to symbolize that he stands for the timeless principle of Advaita or non-duality. And this Advaita Vedanta as we know it today was introduced to the world by none other than Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada. So do join me again next week as we explore Dikshitar's kriti in the light of Adi Shankaracharya's works on Advaita. Until then, Srimad Tyagarajo Virajate, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.